On today's episode of Let's Talk Dog Business, we are on about taking one step forward and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
We've been reflecting.
Love a reflection.
Yeah, and me. We've been reflecting on the journey of growth in a general sense, but more specifically, the ability or the journey of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And I, for one, have absolutely been pushed to the max of my comfort zone over the last 6 to 8 months in lots of ways. But I suppose let's talk about because of the podcast growth and success, I want to talk about the visibility thing, which is a bone of contention for so many people, dog industry related people or not. It's like, oh, I don't want to show my face. I look horrendous. No one wants to see this. All of those stories that we tell ourselves. And like, let's face it, in reality, we talk so much about connecting with human beings and the ability to allow them to like you and trust you and know you a little bit more. So it's one of those things that, as much as we don't like it, it's kind of an essential if you want to make the best business you possibly can. Because without a face behind your brand, how can anyone connect with you?
Why do you think people, or not even people, like us, we're people, why do you think we don't want to put ourselves out there?
Because of the fear of what people are going to say, mainly.
And where does that come from?
Because I don't know where it comes from, but it's that all these stories that run through our heads.
Yeah.
They're going to think this, they're going to think that, they don't want to know this, they're not interested. And if we were going to speak to somebody that we'd just met, say we're on a course and we've just met somebody for the first time, we're like, oh, hi, what do you do? Da, da, da. You're not going to just be like, well, I'm not going to say anything because in case they think I'm an absolute idiot and they don't want to know that about me.
Can you imagine? Just mute.
Yeah, like a little mouse. It just, you do it. And I think it's this difference. And I've definitely felt the barrier of, like, we'll talk about cameras and stuff like that in a minute, but I've definitely felt that like difference.
Yeah.
Because you haven't got a human being that you're talking to is the first thing when you're doing anything like social media or anything online. Unless you've got, like we have, when we can talk to each other, but generally speaking, it's you're talking to nobody. And I just think it's that you feel awkward, you kind of change the way you talk to each. I don't know, it's weird. You just suddenly go into like weird presenter mode and you use inflections where you wouldn't normally, or do you know, it's that kind of thing where we go, well, we just sound robotic. We don't sound like ourselves. And I've certainly done this where I've looked back at something and gone, I do not like the sound of myself there. But it's really hard to just sit there in a really relaxed way and talk as if you're talking to a human being. So I totally get it.
Yeah, there's a few things in that, isn't there? I remember when we decided that we wanted to do the podcast. Actually, no, even take it a step back. When we decided we wanted to do Canine Business Academy, we knew we would have to voice our opinions on how people run their businesses. And I remember the conversation of, oh, how do we want to do this? Like, how passionate are we about this? Because we're going to have to put ourselves out there, faces, names, unless we did like pseudonames. It's all of us.
And also our opinions of the industry and what we feel is wrong with it.
Yeah.
I remember having that conversation with you as well and going, how far do we go with this? Because we think it's pretty much a shit show.
Yeah.
So do we say that, or do we just vanilla it up a little bit? Like, how do we do it?
Yeah. And arguably, I'd say we did try to, well, not even try. We did vanilla it when we launched, I suppose, in those early days. And then we realised, certainly from the podcast episode, I think we got 10 minutes into trying to be vanilla and we was like,
failed miserably at that.
Do it. It's like, oh shit, we've said it now.
Just get it out there.
Yeah, it's just out. But it is scary putting yourself out there. And I think certainly from my personal experience from doing the podcasting anyway, it's given me a skill set that I never thought I could have. Things that I am becoming more and more acutely aware of. It's like my filler words when I'm thinking. Definitely trying to avoid things like although I'll still do it because I'm human and I haven't worked on that bit as much. But I'm very, very conscious now of maybe pausing when I'm thinking or elongating sentences like exactly what I've just done because I'm thinking. I'm going, how can I actually do it without going, yeah. So actually, yeah is one that I really piss myself off with because I'll hear it. You know, when you're trying to end like a voice note or something, or you're checking in with someone and go, so yeah. So what the fuck does that mean?
We feel the need to just keep going, don't we? We're like, why don't we know that enough is too much?
Yeah.
But it's all those things, isn't it? It's one of the things that we were taught when we started doing a podcast was rather than verbally agree with somebody by an or a yeah, try and just use your facial expressions. And that's really hard.
Yeah, do you know how many times I wanted to during even that bit?
Yeah, so you're kind of over-exaggerating your facial expressions and you got these like eyebrows that are going up and like this massive smile on your face because especially if it's someone on Zoom because they can't necessarily, it's not as easy to do that as it is in person. So you really over-egg it on Zoom because you don't want to appear rude to the other person. But then at the same time, you know you're going to keep interrupting. It's going to sound just rubbish if you keep getting those. And it also cuts a bit of the audio off, I think, as well. Not getting too technical. Ryan will probably put me right on that. But so we're aware of all of those things as well, aren't we?
Yeah. And because you've been pushed so far, because like this is, it's comfortable now. It wasn't. In fact, I remember when we were driving down here for that first day and we were like, oh, like what's it going to be like? We're going to actually have to sit in a room and there's going to be somebody watching us talk.
Yeah, that was the other thing. People are just going to sit watching us and listening to our shit.
And I was like, oh God. And then are we going to come across as like those stupid dickhead girls that just keep laughing and they're going to think, oh God, you don't know what you're doing, like a bunch of novices and all of that.
Yeah, but there's that fear of judgment straight away, isn't it? Like, we don't, because again, we're kind of so new, we were new to it and we didn't know what other people were podcasting about and that they might be a font of knowledge in their skill set. And we're just like, what are we doing? What like amateurs are we? We even did an interview this week and worried that we came across a bit amateurish.
I know. I was like,
how stupid is that?
Honestly, the stuff you tell yourselves. But I think everything you do, in our personal opinion anyway, when you are working on yourself and therefore your business, or vice versa, when you are working on the business and therefore yourself, you are always going to be growing. I don't think there's a way of working on it without working on yourself, whichever way you think you're looking at it. They come hand in hand. And that ultimately impacts everything, like how you talk to clients, how you manage those relationships.
What? Podcasting means you really, really listen as well. It's that active listening. And this is one of the reasons we never have a script. Because if you've just got a load of questions to ask somebody, potentially you're not even listening to the answer that they're giving.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we've really learned works well because you have to actively listen. Because that's respectful and you want to hear what the person's got to say, but then you need it for the next question you're going to ask. So in your head, you're kind of going, right, okay, this conversation's going here. That would lead really nicely onto this subject. So how do we use that in a way? So I think that for me has been the biggest skill of podcasting when we're interviewing somebody.
Yes.
And it's an art form in itself, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Makes sense why I'm mentally drained at the end of these days.
Absolutely. And like this is our second day now. So we're going to be absolutely zapped by.
I don't feel as zapped today. I
don't feel as zapped today. But I, on that journey back home, which is a couple of hours for us to get home from the studio, yeah, I feel myself as the journey goes on, like getting more and more zapped.
But is it even on those journeys home, we're still reflecting about the day that's just happened and the things that we've learned and the things that we've applied. And I think because I feel like for us specifically, we are always pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. Like I've had some, I feel like I want to say horrendous realizations about myself these last few days. And it's the areas like I know I choose to work in a very, I don't even know how you describe it, like a very determined, driven. Don't know if this is making sense to anybody, but I'm very 150 miles an hour.
Just for a bit of context, we've just done an episode on personality profiling, which has been really interesting. And so I think that's going around in our heads as well.
Probably, yeah. And I think even before that episode was recorded, though, and we got to interview Andy on it, I'd sent you a message, didn't I? And I was like, I just feel weird, was my exact words. I was like, I feel a bit weird.
So the text came through from you saying, I feel weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, there's got to be more coming than this. And you don't text me very often, especially if it's something like poignant. It's not going to be a text message, is it? So I was like, okay. So I think I was in the garden doing something, bits and pieces, and I'd left my phone inside and I came back to this really long voice note.
Yeah. And I felt like I just needed to get a load of stuff off my chest that wasn't even, what did we describe it as in the end? A non-problem.
A non-problem.
Double negative.
Yeah.
But it was, I just felt like I needed to get all this stuff off my chest because I felt really weird. And
hadn't we done like a Zoom interview or something in the morning together? We'd done something together on Zoom.
We did do something in the morning.
We'd come off straight off the call and then you sent that message not long after.
Yeah. But I think I'd been feeling it for the few days prior where it was, I think I was very conscious because we'd just gone through, it was the early part of the launch for Business Basics. So it was like, if you can imagine, full steam ahead, shit needing to get done. And I don't know, I think I just went into that mindset, which I always do, of going like, right, when something needs doing, I can go all in. And I'm very quick to make decisions. I find it really easy to just go, right, here's the question, there's the solution. And I can just do it. Or if I suddenly then go, oh, all these things need doing. But if I see them as, again, there's like quick fire things, I can do it. Whereas you can't do that. And I struggle with that. But I've never struggled before. And I don't know if it's just because we'd had it's been a busy 6 months, hasn't it? Like we've done a hell of a lot. And there's obviously other stuff going on. And if you've listened to the previous episodes, you kind of know the stuff that's circling in the background. But I don't know, that kind of just made me, I was very acutely aware of what I deemed as my flaws, I suppose, but how it was making me feel icky that you don't work the same as me. And it was pissing me off. And it sounds horrendous to say it out loud. I remember saying to Darren, I was like, I feel really pissed off, but there's no logical reason why I should feel pissed off because nothing's gone wrong. Like it's a non-problem. It's just, why can nobody work the same way that I do? And it was just pure frustration and I had nowhere to outlet it to. So that was, and for me, like that's that big growth journey of the more you keep doing and the more you keep pushing yourself out that comfort zone, which has come off the back of the podcast, which has come off the back of writing the book, which has come off the back of recording the course. Like all of these different skills have been needed. And then it's like, oh. But then to me, I've taken that as a massive win as well, that we can talk about it. Like I can tell you I'm pissed off without being pissed off.
When you did that voice note, were you anticipatory about the response I was going to give?
Initially, yes. But then once I'd hit send, and I didn't deliberate over sending it, it's like once I decided to send, I was like, I'm okay with sending it because I know we're totally fine and I know you'll get it. But initially, like, I suppose before I'd sent the initial message, like the starter of it, I suppose, like that I feel weird bit, it was, should I not say anything? Should I say anything? If anything, what was actually running through my head was like, I feel like I need to talk to somebody about this because I don't want to ruin anything. So who else can I talk to so I can get this stuff out? And then it's fine. Like, I've dealt with it, but not through you. And then I realized I was like, that's just shit. I need it to be you. And I want it to be you. So I'm just going to do it. Why? You've got a weird look on your face at me.
Because then I sent my reply back and acknowledged everything you'd said. And I suppose my reply was just saying, I don't know. I can't even remember what it was.
No, that's what I mean. It was a non problem, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it's definitely come through that growth, I think, of going, we can talk to each other about those things because it's not a thing. It's not a personal attack. It's not
No. And I think you'd said a couple of things in there about, I respect the way you do things and I wish sometimes I could do things the way you do. And I was like, I'm the same. Like, I've got this view sometimes of you where I'm like, do you know what? She can just do something straight away and I have to think about it and just make sure it's all right in my head. And that frustrates me myself sometimes. So I totally appreciate that I slow you down sometimes, or that's how I perceive it anyway. And then but then it's a good realization that you sometimes are maybe a little bit too speedy and need slowing down a little bit. And then maybe I'm too slow and I need to speed up a little bit. So I think it's always about that. The dance, I was going to say balance, but it's not about that. It's dance of like ebbing and flowing back and forth to whatever we need to do in that situation. And that leads really nicely, I suppose, onto that, the personality profiles, because it's that ability to be, say, you're one type of profile, but be able to adapt into another when it's required. And I feel like that's working nicely between us because we are very different personality profiles, but when it's required, we do dip into each other's more just to allow each other to catch up or to slow down or whatever it is. So that's nice that we can do that as well.
Yeah. And I genuinely believe that wouldn't have come if we don't keep pushing ourselves out of that comfort zone, because it's easy to stay safe, isn't it?
And it's easy to just get really frustrated with the other person and going, you're always too fast. I can't keep up. I can't do this. Or you go, you're too slow. I can't like deal with this speed. And just go, right, we can't do it then. And that's an easy thing and probably something I would have done before. But now I'm like, do you know, I've got this relationship we've got is everything is 50-50. Everything has got to be considered with the other person in mind. I can't make... For many years, I made the decision myself and it impacted nobody else. And now it impacts you. Whatever I decide or whatever I say is going to have some kind of impact on you. And I have to be really mindful of that.
Yeah. That was a hard one, wasn't it?
Really hard.
It was
really, really hard.
Do you know what? When you was talking then, I was actually thinking, and I can't remember what he was doing now. I lost my train of thought, but it was about how some people are really scared of feeling like they need to put their themselves out there. So, you know, like that, that was it. So the whole, if I'm talking to you, because I would say I got over, air quote, doing lives and stuff on Facebook a few years ago, because I remember that journey that I went on to push myself through it, and it's fucking hard. And now it doesn't bother me at all, to the point where any of those of you who have seen my random walks at 5 a.m. in the morning with I've even done wet hair, massive hair, definitely no makeup. I'd never have done that before. I'd spend fucking hours going, just making my hair looks nice. And I got my makeup on and all of that. And now I'm like, I'll just whip the camera out. But you still can't do lives, can you? So you'll always do recorded. But it's those things of, you get frustrated at yourself that you can't do something, so you just don't do it. And I think for a lot of us, we know that we, air quote, should be putting ourselves out there more on social media and pictures of yourself and being a bit more relatable. But if you keep stopping and blocking yourself at every corner, And maybe it's because you do feel like you should. It's a case of, well, do I want to grow? Am I willing to do what it takes to get me to the next step? Whatever your next step is. It doesn't have to be like 10 steps ahead. It's to get 10 steps ahead, you've still got to take the first step.
Yeah. And let's take the example of the course that we've just filmed, because so the course that we've just created, Business Basics, is delivered in many formats for people. So just as a quick overview, we have a weekly live session where we will have people on there for about an hour, and then we will have a login vault or portal or whatever you want to call it, with some summary videos on. And we'll also have some audio and some workbooks as well. So there's lots of ways that people could consume the information. And that was always what we wanted to do. We were like, it's no good. Well, we sort of talk about this on another episode, but we want it to be as accessible as possible. So in doing that, it means the easy bit for us is the Zoom delivery, which we're used to doing inside out, like the back of our hand, and it doesn't bother us. And that's the live element, which could really scare some people.
Yep.
And then the bit where we're recording the videos, that's the really scary bit. Well, it has been, especially for me, because this is the bit where you've got to talk to a camera with no one behind it and pretend there's a load of people watching you and listening.
How long did it take us to do? So we did a little promo video, and we were so cockily confident about it, going, oh, do you know what? We've just got a spare, like the afternoons just suddenly become available whilst it was at the studio. Let's just do a quick, 2-minute thing? Just a quick 2-minute thing, just telling everybody about the course. And in our heads, we was like, it's so fucking easy. So we can do that. We talk about it all day long. Yeah. We know exactly what that course is like on the back of our hands. And then all of a sudden it was turn around, face the camera. And it was like, oh my God.
It was the hardest
what just
thing.
happened? And I would say, I don't even feel like this is an exaggeration, but I think that 2-minute video took us about 4 hours.
Yeah, it was close to that, wasn't it?
It was ridiculous.
With lots of like, oh, I can't do that. This is ridiculous. It's just not going to happen.
Got stuck in our own heads. Hated every bit. Then you were getting snappy, which was then getting me snappy. And then we're like, oh my God, this is horrendous. How can we not do this? And then it spirals, like your headspace spirals, doesn't it? And going, oh my God, if we can't even do this, how on earth are we going to get the rest of it done? But all of this is part of that growth journey. And if everything was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah. And I think we knew it was going to be that way because we really struggle with the intros. Whenever we do a podcast, for anyone that watches and you've seen us do the intros, we always have to film them separately because we really struggle with the talking to the camera bit.
Do you know what? I feel like we should maybe stop doing that and try it.
What?
Our element of growth. Stop doing it separate.
Oh. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I'm not sure I'm ready for quite that yet. But yeah, so I think it was in my head to go, I hate doing that, so I'm really going to struggle with this. And that's what I was telling myself straight away. But actually, when we did day one of the proper filming, it started off okay. And then we had a bit of a discussion about something that was within the course, and that kind of put a pause on everything. So it was a bit of a weird ending to the day, but we did quite well with it.
Yeah.
And then in between that, other stuff happened. That conversation that we were talking about earlier between us and loads of other stuff has happened in that week. It actually seems like a really long time because it was only like a week.
Yeah, it was
gap.
a week.
But like going back to the filming, it's like you've had that sort of latent learning opportunity just to let everything embed and process it all.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm pretty right in saying we managed to smash it in the end.
Yeah.
And it felt a lot easier.
Yeah. John, you saying latent learning then? It got me thinking of, again, dog training. It's like or any kind of learning. I think everybody makes this assumption, and I definitely default to this. Like if I don't know, if I buy like a new course or a book or something, I feel like I need to consume it all in order, all straight away. And if I really want to learn it, that's all I need to focus on all the time. But it's almost this like, it is that latent learning. Like you'll do it and then it's circulating in your brain somewhere. And you're like, oh, I can pull that bit out and I'll pull that bit out. And then the more you actually, it's the implementation rather than the learning, isn't it? So for argument's sake, if we had done if our podcasting agency had done us I don't know, a mini course or a couple of hours or something on telling you how to do it, and then you never did it, that's not going to sink in. You're not going to have learned how to do it. So you have to do it. And I think you have to make the mistakes. And the mistakes don't always have to be like this absolutely horrendous thing that has to happen. But there'll be mistakes. And if the more you can learn to just laugh about it and learn from it and go like, oh, yeah, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like with that intro thing, we learn, oh, let's not make our lives difficult. Let's just do this thing and we'll just do it separate. And then everything's just a lot easier. Yeah. And then if we want to and it feels natural, then we'll just stick it back in again.
But I've got to say, dare I say this, probably like cursing myself now, but I'm actually like excited for the next challenge, for what we do next with an online pre-recorded course, because I feel like I could do it again.
Yeah. And if anything, for us, we've set ourselves a challenge of the year 2025. That sounds weird, doesn't it? Is going to be our year to get more public speaking under our belt.
Yes. So that's another thing we want to work on.
Yeah. And that's going to be fucking scary.
Yeah.
But the more and more we keep doing on everything, the more we keep pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, the more amazing things happen. And I can promise you all this, the more you push yourselves out of that comfort zone on your business, it's just going to grow. And when I say grow, I feel like I need to caveat it with, in case there's any of you listening going, well, I don't want it to grow. Like I'm quite happy being just me.
Just me.
It doesn't have to be grow with a load of staff or anything. It's grow as yourself.
Think of it as evolve rather than grow.
Evolve. Much better word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're learning more about yourself and your business will evolve into something that potentially you never thought possible. And it will be whatever it is supposed to be for you. And that's something really exciting. But you have to, in our opinion, you're never going to get there if you don't push yourself.
No. And I think it comes sort of related to one of our values, which is we always want to be unapologetically us. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like even when we have to do pressured things like talk to a camera when there's nobody there, I do feel like we try and bring that in.
Yes.
And it's that element of being professional, but also remembering that it is us. And we're not just like this one person in one situation and one in another. We're trying to fuse it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to do almost, because you're like, really, I just want to mess around in front of the camera and just be like how we normally are in a podcast, but we kind of can't in that situation. But at least there's still us in there.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Will you like tell us when you do the course?
It's very true. It's very true. So I think, where would you suggest somebody starts then on their growth journey? Bit of I hate saying a tip. I need another word to kind of summarize it, but where can people take the first step to their evolving growth journey and push themselves out of their comfort zone?
Oh, I don't know really with that question. There's so many ways you can do it.
For me, I would say every single person will have, maybe start off with writing a list of all the things that you feel you're putting off. Because you'll know what they are, because you'll want to do them deep down, which is why they're at the forefront of your mind. And I think lots of that could be something like, oh, I need to put my face on social media more, or whatever it is, but just do it and just do it. Just take one step. It doesn't mean that you've suddenly got to commit to changing your whole life to doing it. But if it is something like sticking a photo, if you say, or you feel like you want to do a live on Facebook, take it a step back and just do a recorded video and start there. Because then you can edit it or you can delete it or
the way that Joe mentioned earlier about I'm not great at doing lives, but I find them easier when I'm doing something else at the same time. It takes that pressure off. So if you go for a walk with the dog and do a live, or I've done it where I'm driving along. So I'm concentrating on doing something else as well. And it's taking that pressure off yourself. So if there's any little ways that work for you to be able to make it happen, and even if it's just a minute or something, start small and then you can grow it.
Yeah. So just start. Take one little step.
Messy action.
Messy action. Messy, imperfect action. You never know where it's going to lead you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we would absolutely love it if you would give us a quick review and share our podcast.